Welcome to Lead the Way with Anna Gauker. Your guide, Anna Gauker, is on a quest of her own to find effective ways of creating change and inclusion in our communities. You have come to the right place if you believe in truth, justice, and coffee. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, this is Lead the Way, and I'm Anna Gauker. We have a great interview for you in this episode. Homelessness is an issue that I'm very passionate about. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to talk with Karla Thennes, someone with a lifelong commitment to homelessness issues and people experiencing homelessness. Karla is Executive Director of Porchlight, a large nonprofit organization in Madison with many branches that all aim to address homelessness in our community. She's been with the organization for her entire career, and it is really fascinating listening to her talk about how her role has evolved over the years, and she has grown in the process. Here is my interview with Karla Thennes. Well, thanks so much for taking this time for us. Can you start by telling me a bit about your background? Are you from Madison? And how did you find your way to Porchlight?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my name is Karla Thennes. And no, I am from Minnesota. And I came to Madison to go to grad school at the university in social work. And I have been with Porchlight. I just celebrated my 30 years in May of this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I tell my children it's the only grown-up job I have ever had. So yes, I've been here for quite a while, but been with Porchlight. I did my internship. In social work, you have to do an internship, and I did it at Porchlight 31 years ago. And then as I was to head back home, they offered me a job, and here I am.
Wow, what was your first impression of the work as an intern, and how has that evolved?
I loved it. I did my internship at our men's shelter, which for 40 years before the pandemic was at Grace Episcopal Church. And I was literally the only woman, 22 years old in the whole place. All the staff were men. Of course, it's the men's shelter, so all the clients were men. And it was fabulous. I never had any issues. They really wanted the help. They were more than happy to sit down with me and let me help them. My mother in Minnesota was very worried about me because I'm from a little farming community of 325 people. And of course, I moved to the big city, and now I'm working with a men's shelter. So she was, I'm sure, terrified the whole year that I did it. But I told her, I literally remember saying that I was the most well-protected woman in Madison, that everywhere I went, everyone was Karla, there's Karla. So it was fabulous. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Did you know right away in college you wanted to get into social work?
Yes, but my interest started even before that. I was a senior in high school, again, from this very small town. And we went on that, as seniors do, that, Washington, D.C., New York City school trip type thing. And so that would have been, I graduated in 86, so 1986. And I very clearly, like, people always say, did you have like this moment that you wanted to do social work? Not only did I have this moment about social work, I had this moment was about working with people who are homeless. And so what we'd have been, 17. And so we were on this week trip, and one of the days the chaperones had said that we could go explore without the chaperones. And so I and three other girlfriends, and let's see, we were in Washington, D.C. We went downtown, and I remember very clearly we were just in a shopping little area outside looking at sunglasses, like on this kiosk. And this, man who appeared to be homeless, walked up to us and asked us for $1. And of course, the chaperones had said, you're 17-year-old girls, don't talk to anybody, don't give anybody money. They gave us the whole lecture before we left. And anyway, so he said, could I have $1? I haven't had anything to eat today. And he said that a couple times. And of course, we didn't say anything. And I remember we kind of like moved and shifted around the sunglasses. And then eventually we just kind of walked away, and he started following in our direction. And I don't remember feeling frightened or anything. He just happened to be going the way we were going. But I remember a couple times he said, don't pretend like you don't see me, which of course was exactly what we were doing. And so we were walking, and again, he said, I just need $1. I haven't had anything to eat today. And so eventually he stopped, and we kept going. And then we saw a man walk past us, and the homeless person said the same thing to him. Could he have $1? He hadn't had anything to eat today. And the man gave him $1. And I remember the four of us. So we stopped, right? Because we want to watch. And, our little 17-year-old judgmental selves, I remember one of us was just like, oh, I bet he's going to buy cigarettes. I bet he's going to buy beer or something, justifying why we can't give him this $1. And so he walked up to a hot dog vendor, and he bought a hot dog. And it was like this stop in the street moment for me, like how easy it was to not see him, to not hear his plight, his story, to judge him. And these other three girls, I thought it was always kind of funny. I saw them again. It's like our 10-year class reunion or something. And, what do you do? And what do you do? And that kind of thing. And they were teachers and other, helpful field type things. And I said, I became a social worker. I work with the homeless. I said, you remember that moment, right? With the sunglasses and the homeless man and what he said to us. And none of them had any idea what I was talking about. I'm like, what do you mean? That was like this pivotal moment, not just in my career, but in my life, about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And nope, they're just like, that was your moment. It wasn't ours. And so I went, graduated from high school, and then I went to school in Minnesota, got my undergrad in social work, did my internship there with low-income and homeless folks. And then I knew when I came to Madison, I only interviewed for one internship. I wanted the one at the men's shelter. And then when I graduated from grad school, they offered me a job. We had just opened the year before, we had just opened a day center called Hospitality House, and they asked me to be the first manager of that, which I did that for probably 2-3 years. And then I pretty quickly went from direct supervision, like, one-on-one working with people, to more administrative, where I supervised the case managers and the social workers. And then even more administrative, like writing grants and reporting and those types of things. And then I've only been the executive director for the past 4 years. So that was, I joke that I have either worked in or supervised every program that Porchlight has. So, which helps when you're, telling people about Porchlight.
For sure. You mentioned that moment struck you and how easy it was to not notice the man in New York and how that really affected you. But what about that do you think made you feel like that's something I can have an impact on?
Mhm. Mhm. I think it was, it would have been easy just to be like, oh my gosh, that's really sad. And his situation is sad.
Right.
And, you know, I feel bad, but you also justify it, right? I was 17 years old and in a, my cat's trying to participate, in a big city. And obviously I shouldn't have given him $1 and struck up a conversation with anybody, let alone, somebody who's approaching me. And so that all made sense to me even then, but it wasn't that, right? It was this whole bigger picture of, as a senior, you're thinking about what do I want to do with my life and, that kind of thing. And so I had my job in high school had been working as a nursing assistant in a nursing home, and I loved the social worker in the nursing home. And so I think I probably had an inclination that I already wanted to be a social worker, and so I would have to say that moment more solidified that of the population I wanted to work with, right? With folks, with housing insecurity, because you're working with folks with mental health issues and alcohol and drug issues and, poverty and families and, everybody, right? Everybody could be in a situation where they lose their housing and need to completely start all over. And so, yeah, I think that moment really clarified that for me.
Knowing what you know now and thinking back on that moment, what would you tell your 17-year-old self to do in that situation?
Yeah. I still can't, I'm not naive enough to say, like, right, like I said, that I should have given him $1, right? Like, I don't think that was even the point, right? It was because I was from such a small rural farming community. I never would have been exposed to those types of situations, right? Um, and so I kind of think that, that even just going on that trip and being exposed to these bigger life type situations, I guess I'm glad that I had that opportunity to do that. It's interesting when I talk to my kids. I have 3 kids, 19, 17, and 14. And so, of course, 19 and 17-year-old are thinking about, one's in college and the other one's thinking about that and careers. And I just said, this is something you will do the rest of your life. Obviously, I'm a social worker. I work for a nonprofit. It's not a lucrative career by any means, but enough, obviously, to have nice things and support my family. And I just said, every day you're going to your job. It needs to be something that you love to do. And so I'm not saying you have to do something like I've done. If you want to be an accountant and you love numbers and you love whatever, making things work out, then that's something too. But find something. I mean, I kind of feel sometimes we're at our jobs more than we're even home with our families. And so just find something that's meaningful and that you love to do.
You mentioned that you've worked in pretty much every part of Porchlight, and it is such an expansive organization. Can you outline for us a bit about all that Porchlight does?
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'd be happy to. So Porchlight has been around for about 40 years, and it started with the men's shelter because 2 people froze to death on the streets of Madison when we didn't think that there was any type of homeless issue here, that we had folks who were in that type of a situation. And so faith community members kind of rallied together and rented out a space. And I believe back then it wasn't just single men, it was just folks who were homeless in general, and opened it up and said, and staffed it with volunteers. And said, if you need a place to go, come. And people came. And I remember because many of the volunteers, the people who started this kind of ad hoc shelter so many years ago, they helped form Porchlight and were on our board of directors. And so because I've been around forever, I've got to meet them and kind of hear their stories. And so, they did that for a few years. Eventually, I think they hired like a staff person. And then eventually that temporary site was moved to Grace Episcopal Church, which was where our shelter was for 40 years pre-pandemic. And so I think folks are most familiar with what Porchlight does with the men's shelter, because A, we're the only men's shelter in town. And B, for 40 years, all of the meals, supper and breakfast, it's just a nighttime shelter, were done by volunteers. And so many of these faith communities, but businesses and families, I had 70 different groups that every night of the year, 365 days a year, supper and breakfast. For supper, they would make the menu, they would purchase the food, they would make it in their church basement, and then they would bring it in big silver trays, serve it to the men, clean up, head home. And then breakfast they would actually make on site. We had a little kitchen with griddles and that type of thing, so they'd have a hot breakfast. And literally that happened for 40 years with no cost to Porchlight or the county or the city. I mean, truly amazing. But that was really people's connection. That's what they knew that Porchlight did. Like, they knew that we did the shelter because they were a part of it. But then after the shelter, we knew that we didn't want to just shelter people, right? That in order to, help people move out of that situation, we needed housing, we needed affordable housing. And so we started buying up housing, vacant houses, or buying houses, quite a bit of stuff downtown. Just like houses, like almost like college students do, where 5 guys live there and they share the house and they have their own room and they have a lease and that kind of stuff. And of course, we could never find anything downtown now, 40 years later, just because, large developers are buying up all of that stuff. But we have probably the largest thing that we do is affordable housing. We have scattered throughout Madison and some in some Prairie, 375 units of affordable housing, and we own all of them. We do the property management and maintenance and the social work services for families and for singles. We have an eviction prevention program. We have an outreach program. We have an employment and job training program called Porchlight Products. That is one of my favorite programs. We hire formerly homeless folks with disabilities, and we have a beautiful 4-year-old commercial kitchen on the east side of Madison. And we make different products. They make jams and sauerkraut and mixes, different scones and pancake mixes. We make 12 different things. We buy all of our produce from local farmers, and then we hire the participants. So it's not just training, it's also employment. They make a wage. And they basically work as many hours as they can. Generally, I mean, I have one person, he can work 4 hours a week, so that's what he works. Otherwise, people average between 10 and 20 hours a week. And then we sell the products in local grocery stores and in local restaurants. And so, it's not this big money-making thing at all. The purpose is to help teach somebody, an actual job skills, those type of things, and to give people purpose and self-worth. They do sampling every week in all of the grocery stores, so they get to interact with people and show them the products that they made and point them out on the shelves and those types of things. So that's certainly one of my favorite programs. Within our housing, we have just regular housing that if you're low income or homeless, you can rent. But then we have kind of specialty type housing. We have housing that's just for veterans. We have housing that's for folks with mental health issues. And then, like I said, we have about 34 units of family housing. And the majority of our housing is all certainly affordable, but we have case management services attached to them, so that we can work with folks on whatever issues that they identify that they'd like to work on while they live in our housing. I feel like I'm missing a program. Oh yeah, one more. Safe Haven. Safe Haven is housing and a day program for homeless folks, adults who have a diagnosed mental health issue. And so for the day program, they can come every day, get a meal, get their address, get their mail there. There's social work staff there, so they can look for housing, look for jobs, get help applying for disability or doctor's appointments. And then attached to that building, we have 14 like apartments, but they're just rooms. So they would have their own room and share kitchen and bath. And then they have a lease and they would pay rent and that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. Thank you for that. That was well said. And I mean, I don't know why it's blowing my mind. So Porchlight started in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah, like 84, 85. Mm-hmm.
And before that, Madison didn't know there was a homelessness problem. Why does that blow my mind?
Yeah, right. Isn't that true? So there would have been, I don't know, so the Salvation Army does the family shelters and the single women shelter. And so I don't know, I can't say I've ever asked. I don't know how long they have been in existence. Let me move my cat here. But like I said, we're the only men's shelter today and only one that's ever been around. There wasn't one before that. And so I don't know if it just wasn't a visible thing, if you didn't have a house, did you crash with your family or your friends? Was it not so obvious to other people? I don't know.
It seems like homelessness is at a crisis level in almost every medium-sized to large city. What should people in the Madison community know, or how can we help?
Mm-hmm. I really feel that before the pandemic, we were really making some great strides here. The one thing I love about Madison is that I think we work very well together as a community. Obviously there's many nonprofits, right, that are all, there's the Salvation Army and the Y and Delirium and the Road Home. I mean, there's many of us doing something. But for years and years, we have been writing grants together, running programs together. Like at Porchlight, we know families are not our niche, right? I mean, we have our eviction prevention program that helps families. We have family housing, but it's not our thing, right? Like I tell people, go to the Salvation Army, go to the Y, go to the Road Home. Those are the family experts. Like that is where they put all of their energy and resources. We're probably, because of the men's shelter, we're kind of known as the agency that works with single men. And I kind of feel like that's our niche, that's our expertise. And so I think, even though, resources are scarce, I still think we work very well together as a community. And I didn't find that unusual because I don't know anything differently, right? But then you meet other people from other states or, big cities like Milwaukee. And it's not like that, which would make it very difficult, because I think the reason why we work so well is because we are doing it for the benefit of of the clients. And together we write lots of grants together. And I thought we were making headway on the numbers, as far as like family homelessness. If I had like my chart in front of me, like from 2015 to 2020, they had like a 50% reduction in the number of families seeking shelter at the Salvation Army. Just doing like some really cool creative stuff. Something called diversion, which is when a family comes into shelter, instead of just automatically putting him into shelter and saying, okay, you can be here for 90 days, really working with a family to see if they had other options. Where did you stay last night? Well, I stayed with my sister in her place, but she says I have to leave. And so then they would say, well, would your sister let you stay for another couple of weeks if she had some money for groceries, or you were able to pay half the rent? Well, yeah, I suppose so. Well, give your sister a call. And then they help her out with a little rent. They give her a gift card for, groceries. And then maybe they don't see that family again, right? Maybe just not ending up in a shelter help them to kind of keep going a bit. So our goal as a community is to get, whether it's single women, families, single men, is to get homelessness down to less than 30-day stint. That we're not going to completely eliminate homelessness. There's not going to ever be the need to eliminate shelters. That's just not a thing. People are always going to be losing housing or have some type of crisis in which they lose their home. So our goal at a community is to keep that rare and brief, with the goal being of less than 30 days. And because all of us who receive federal funds, have that, all of that information has to be, we have a homeless management system that all has to be inputted into all of our clients and our programs on a daily basis, so that Madison, the city, could actually run reports to show us how are we doing, right? We have a goal. How are we all doing? And before the pandemic hit, we were down to 39 nights that when somebody becomes homeless, they lose their housing, they seek out shelter, we make an intervention, we rehouse them. That took 39 nights, which I think is amazing. So that's all kind of gone to heck in a handbag with the pandemic. Numbers are up. People who've never been homeless before lost their jobs. They had been teetering, just enough money to pay their rent. Well, then they lost their job, and they lost their housing, and they ended up homeless. So the numbers of people sleeping outside are up. Numbers of people seeking shelter are up. So I don't know if we're going to start all over, but we're certainly not out of that yet. And I feel like we have the framework, right? We know what it is, what we want to do, and we were doing it very successfully before the whole world was rocked by the pandemic. I think we just need to get into our position again where we can, do a good job with all of that.
What is the key to the collaboration that you described amongst various agencies and organizations? Do you have a meeting regularly? Are you communicating? What's the strategy?
Yeah, they meet, and I say they just because it's not me anymore, it's other people within Porchlight. They meet once a month, the first Tuesday of every month. And I remember going to the meeting as an intern 31 years ago. And so obviously they've been doing it longer than 30 years. And it had always been in person the first Tuesday of the month, like over the lunch hour for an hour and a half, at United Way. And then it switched to, as most things did, switched to remote. It's just now on Zoom, but the same thing, first Tuesday of the month. And I mean, it's got to be 75 people in different organizations. And they're talking about openings, right? You have vacancies in your housing. Porchlight isn't the only one who has housing out there for folks. Are there grant opportunities? Are there opportunities to collaborate? The different funders, the city is on the line, the county, United Way, pretty much anybody who is touching different, we have lots of different committees who are, like we go from this very large monthly meeting, right? But the real work is done in the committees. So usually people are volunteer to, do one or two committees in addition to that. And I think just working with people from other organizations, you get to know them personally and not just making a referral, because you're sitting on committees together, or maybe they meet for coffee or whatever. I think that helps to know that it's just not Porchlight out there, it's other groups too who are doing things. And because it's kind of the way we've always done it, because we've certainly in the last few years, we've had like new kind of grassroots organizations pop up. And so we've, welcomed them into our fold and kind of taught them how we do things here, taken ideas from them. We definitely, we meet a lot. My director of services, Kim, she just talks about how she does like 8, Zooms a week of these different meetings and committees she's on, but it's kind of how stuff gets done.
What do you tell people about homelessness in general and how they can contribute and elevate the issue, and also, like on an ongoing basis, but also like more specifically in the beginning when you're describing the moment that really inspired you? I mean, I think there's like a wide range of comfort levels out there, and a lot of times people don't know what to do in situations like that. And I have my thoughts on it, but I really want your perspective for people.
Yeah, and that's okay that it's not everybody's comfort level, right? We have, obviously I just speak for Porchlight, but we have lots of opportunities for people to get involved. We're a very volunteer intensive organization. And so even as we're slowly, moving forward through the pandemic, we have, on-site, involved type things. We have stuff that, has nothing to do with clients, like you could paint apartments or do landscaping, lots of different things that people can do if they're ready to jump in and get involved. When somebody moves into one of our apartments, we put, whether it's a single person or a family, we put what we call a welcome home basket in their unit. It's basically like a laundry basket full of different things that they would need in their apartment, cleaning supplies and a mop and broom and maybe a roll of quarters for the laundry, laundry detergent, that type of stuff. And so we have different groups who will purchase those things, the dollar store, that's fine. Purchase those things, make up the baskets, deliver them, and then we'll put them in the apartments. And then there's always stuff, we always, like on our website, we have a needs list. There's always, in the winter, we're always in need of socks and underwear and t-shirts and those types of things for the men. So if people want to get involved as far as, physically volunteering, they can do that. If they just want to kind of organize stuff or, raise funds for something, or purchase stuff, they can do those types of things. And so I think, based on people's comfort levels, we have several different things that they can do.
Where do people donate if that's what they want or can do?
Yeah. On our website, we have one of the tabs on the top that says you can donate financially through the website. There also is a tab called volunteering, so you can see information about how to volunteer or the different volunteer opportunities we have available. It has our wish list. It talks about the welcome home baskets. Yeah, you can donate financially that way. Or I tell people, you can write a check and just mail it to Brook Street with the old-fashioned way. If you don't want to do it through the website, that's fine too. And so what I tell people is, I don't shy away from the need. All of those different programs that we talked about today, that costs a lot of money to run those programs, to have the staff who are working in all of those programs. And so every year we have a number, we apply for lots of grants. We get, city, county, federal, United Way, like we get a lot of different grants and different things that pay for this stuff too. But there's always a number that every year that we need to fill in order to balance the budget. And every year that's a number between $800,000 and $1 million. Like it's a very large number. And so like I reassure people that that's how all of this stuff gets done, right? We're very good stewards of the funds that we receive. Like people like to know, how much of it goes toward administration or fundraising. How much of, if I'm giving $1, how much of that actually goes to help people, right? And so 90 cents out of every dollar goes directly into the programs that we're talking about, which I personally think is amazing. Like a United Way, which is a fabulous organization that is very good stewards of people's money, is at 14 cents. So whatever the math is, 86 cents, goes directly back into the programs. So yes, we have a lot of very loyal volunteers as far as people who financially give every year, and that's very important to them. And I think they know the need, right? You can, like you said, it's in the news, right? We're talking about the need for a new men's shelter. We're talking about these encampments. I think since this pandemic, it has really put homelessness as kind of a spotlight of, it's not an area we can continue to ignore. Folks need help. And it's not just the people who've always kind of needed help. It's new people who have lost their jobs, health crises, have lost their housing, that we have to work on getting those people housed and connected to services.
What is your current level of optimism for finding a permanent location for the men's shelter?
I am a forever optimist. You cannot work in this field for 30 years without being a glass half full type person. And so that is who I am. I just, like when the location on Zaire Road didn't work out for a new men's shelter, I just figured that wasn't meant to be, right? Like this will be our new forever home. And so I don't want to be somewhere where we're not welcomed, that we're not, I don't want to have to spend the first 5 years just convincing people they should let us be there. And so I too didn't think it was a great location, not for the same reason that all of the, people located near it, didn't want us to be there. So the city is out there very diligently looking, and I have faith. I have faith that they're going to find a good spot. And because they've been so closely working with us this past year and a half, that I really feel they know what we're looking for, and that it'll be out there. They're currently looking at 4 different locations, and other than the Hooper construction site that they talked about in the paper, I don't know what the other 3 are. But yes, but it's still going to be, down the road, right? Like if they came and said, tomorrow we found something, yay, that's going to take like 2 years to renovate. And then, year 3, we're moving in. Like, it's not going to be, even the Zaire Road location was going to be 18 months of renovation. So we're at First Street and Johnson Street. We can be there till like the beginning of the year, maybe into summer is the latest I've heard of 2022. Which I guess I'd rather move in the summer than the dead of winter like we did last year. They're still going to need a third temporary site. Like, we went from Grace to Warner Park Rec Center to the First Street Garage. Even if they found a place tomorrow, we'll need a third site. And I don't love it for the homeless people who are kind of, shoved around, but we're busing them every day from the Beacon. So most people get on the bus, get transported to the shelter, spend the night, and then the bus comes again at 7:30 in the morning, and then they get routed back to the Beacon. So even if they just want to be downtown, the Beacon is super close to downtown, but most want to go to the Beacon and take advantage of all their services.
What keeps you motivated every day?
I have to say that I'm pretty motivated, but it's hard. It's, I often say to my husband, I could just be working in a flower shop, I really like flowers. And it would be easy and pretty and nice and smell nice and that kind of thing. And he just jokes and says, you're not going anywhere. So I know I'm not going anywhere, but I could work at a flower shop. No, I love what I do. It's something different every day, right? Every day I go in, I feel like I'm dealing with something else. And some days I want to, bang my head against the wall and pull my hair out. But other days it's just, heartwarming, and I meet somebody who I just have a really cool connection with, or somebody's super excited to tell me that they just got a job or something great about their kid, or, that they're excited to tell us about that. And, really, who else would they tell, because they just don't have, family connections anymore, and probably not close friends who are looking out for their best interests. So no, I would say I'll be sticking around till I retire.
Well, that is great to hear. And I think that one last thing, you were describing all of the services that Porchlight provides and all of the different programs. It's such a large organization that touches different parts of our community. So that involves, like you said, a combination of volunteers and staff, many of whom have been with the organization for such a long time. Can you tell us a bit about your approach to leadership in how to communicate and keep everyone on the same page? I'm sure that there's a wide variety of personalities involved, and I think that can be challenging. Mm-hmm. How do you do it?
That's a great question. I kind of feel like that's like, I again say to my husband, he's my sounding board, that's something I feel like I struggle with, right? And his answer is, you're out there doing it, right? Kind of leading by example. We had a wonderful executive director who was my predecessor, Steve Schooler, and he was on the board for 10 years, and then he was a lawyer, or is a lawyer, and he literally quit like his high-powered lawyer job to run a nonprofit. His wife calls it his midlife crisis. And one day he'd come in his 3-piece suit, and the next day he'd come in with his jeans and a sweatshirt because he was hauling donations. And that really just instilled in me that, it's about being out there and doing the work. And so any day you went by Brook Street, where our administrative offices are, and 100 people who live above our heads, I could be out in the lawn picking up trash, right? Because somebody has to do it. Why not me? Right. And so that has always been my philosophy, that if I'm going to ask you to something, it's because you've already seen me do it 10 times and I just need help, you know? But like I said, we've really been working hard on the pay equity, scale. We try to do little appreciation things throughout the year. We just had a big picnic at Elver Park last Saturday and had a great turnout. We're doing a little celebration in September for folks who have celebrated anniversaries, 5, 10, 15 years, do a little pizza thing with them. And so, it's all stuff, it's not mandatory, whatever, but people like to try to get to know people on more of a personal level, because I think people, even the people who work at the men's shelter and, at night, and then the young caseworkers who work in housing during the day, they may be doing different work, but really they're working with the same people, right? Because the men who are sleeping at the shelter, we're trying to get them into housing, and the next day they move into our housing, and now they're working with the caseworker. And so I think everyone just really appreciates all the different hard work that everybody's doing, all with a common purpose. And some days we're just complaining, right? We're complaining to each other that the work is really hard and a little, commiserating. And then, then it's my job to be like, all right, but remember that awesome thing that happened yesterday? And I remember very clearly when I first, I wish in college they would have taught you how to be a supervisor, right? And of course, I wish I'd have taken more business classes, because here I am 30 years later running a business. And I obviously they must have had business classes, but I was going to be a social worker and help homeless people. I didn't need business classes. And of course, there weren't any classes on supervision. But my mantra had always been celebrate the little things, right? Like, it doesn't have to just be Brenda moved into permanent housing, or Johnny got a full-time job, small things, whatever. Somebody got an ID, or somebody said thank you for something that you did, or whatever. Instead of me picking up the trash, I was walking outside and one of the residents who were sitting out on the bench just got up and picked up the trash and threw it away. Like, whatever it is, celebrate the small stuff, because that gets you through the hard week. And that has worked.
My mom recently retired, but she was a special education teacher for many years, and she spoke about how she wished so badly that her training and education had included some management classes and how to manage people or supervise people, because that is such a big part of the job for being a teacher, with other staff in the room and making sure everyone's on the same page about what needs to be accomplished today and what's important and what's not important. And motivating humans is a really important skill set that doesn't always come naturally, or we can't just manifest this knowledge from thin air. So it's just so important.
Yeah, especially if you didn't have a great supervisor yourself, you don't really have anybody to model that type of behavior. The other thing that I've done, so we have, lots of entry level folks, and then we have a management team that meets every month, full of all the people who manage all of the entry level folks. And then I have a leadership team that is made up of all of my directors. And so really referencing my leadership team, which is 4 other people, so 5, including myself, I have surrounded myself with some amazing, hardworking, go-getter type people. Like two of those 4 have been with me for 13 years. One of them just moved to Rochester because her husband got a job at Mayo Clinic, and we were all sad and depressed, like we were going to lose her because she's so integral to the team. And because of the pandemic, I swear it's like the only good thing that came out of the pandemic. Our human resources person just like, well, why don't you just work remotely? Like you've been working remotely, right? This past year, moved to Rochester. And so she did. She moved last summer to Rochester. So her job was supervision. So she does that all through Zoom. She does a lot of grant writing and reporting and all these meetings. Well, the meetings are all still remote. And then she comes, it's just Rochester, so 3 hours away. So every quarter she drives in, and she's got family who lives here. So she stays with them. And then she works like 3-4 days just doing on-site stuff that, needs to be done. And it's funny when I see her, like, I'm always just like, hey, because I see her all the time on Zoom, it's almost like, it's like she's actually there, and not that I haven't seen you for 3 months, so that was fabulous. And then my accountant, who's so amazing, because like that was definitely like when I got the job as executive director, I literally, so my boss, Steve, the executive director, probably for 7 years, and I'm not exaggerating, before he left, every year at our yearly evaluation, he would say, I'm going to retire in 6 years and 5 years and 4 years and 3 years, and I want you to be the next executive director. Well, the first time he said it, I almost had a heart attack, because in my mind, an executive director was a lawyer, right? Not a social worker. And even I told my husband, he's just like, honey, I don't really see you doing that. I'm like, me either. Thank you. I agree. And so I didn't say no, because I knew I shouldn't say no. And I was just like, what? Seriously? And he's just like, all the programs, you're super passionate. We'll teach you the rest. And I'm just like, okay, he's like, I'll just keep asking you. So literally there was probably 2 years left before he retired. He finally said, Karla, I kind of need a yes or a no, because if it's not you, then we need to find somebody else. And I literally and that was my biggest fear. That's where I was going with that, was the business part about it, the financial part about it. And Daniel, who's our accountant, I just said, I don't know anything about spreadsheets and accounts payable and all this stuff and whatever. He just said, I will walk you through all of that. You can ask whatever questions. I will never make you feel small or that you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm just not a math person, not just because I'm a woman. I'm just not a math person. And so I will literally, he'll say something to me or email me, and I will walk into his office and I say, dumb it down, give me 7th grade math. What did you just say to me? And then he will, I'm a smart person. So then he explains it differently, without using big accounting words. And so finally Steve asked me that with 2 years to go. And I just said, I'm freaking out, but I'm just going to say yes. And I decided that the only reason I was in my mind saying no for 5 years was out of fear, right? Lack of confidence in my skills of being able to switch it up. And so because we've surrounded ourselves with this amazing team, I still have probably only learned half of what I probably should know about the finance part. But I told Daniel, that you could never leave. And he said, oh, I know.
Well, thank God for Steve and knowing what you can do before you realized what you can do. Sometimes we just really need those people to kind of give us a nudge.
Absolutely. He could have left and the board would have been hiring somebody, and not once I wouldn't have applied for the job.
Right.
I know that I wouldn't have. In my mind, it should have been a businessman. I don't even know a lot of women who lead large nonprofits, they run all their programs and they're, doing a lot of stuff, but I didn't know any that, that 5 years ago that were running nonprofits. And so, no, I, even the days where I have the headaches of this wouldn't be happening to me if I wasn't the executive director. Or, I'm sorry, the buck does always stop with me. But you figure it out. You just figure it out.
Well, thank you so much, Karla. This has been such a great conversation. And I feel like I've learned a lot, and I think that so many people are going to appreciate this.
Yay. Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you, Anna. It was lovely to meet you. And you just have a fabulous day.
That was Karla Thennes. Big thanks to her for being so generous with her time. To learn more about Porchlight and everything they do, visit porchlightinc.org. And since this is the giving season, consider making a contribution while you're there. All episodes of Lead the Way can be found on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And make sure to rate and review when you subscribe on Apple. Special thanks to Buzz Kemper for his voiceover artistry in the opening. This episode was brought to you by the time and talent of Tyler Willenbrink. I'm Anna Gaucher. Until next time.